So thank you again for joining. We're indeed excited that you're spending your evening, your afternoon, whatever time it is you are in your time zone. Like I said, I'm from Toronto. I'm joining from Toronto in Canada. Um, so we'll be talking about Canadian work permits. We're going to demystify, everything regarding work permits in Canadian immigration, job offers, the myths and the facts. So feel free, we've tried to cover as much as possible, but it's possible we don't cover everything. So once again, leave your questions in the end. We will get through them. Um, so I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Adewumi Odegbami. I'm the managing consultant at Loft Immigration, and I hold the designation of a regulated Canadian immigration consultant, RCIC, and I specialize in all forms of Canadian immigration, permanent and resident type visas. And I mean, temporary, such as visits, work, study, business, and permanent ones like express entry, provincial nominee programs, and so on, for some of you that are familiar with those programs. So all types of federal and some provincial programs were regulated to do that at Loft Immigration. I am also a certified project management professional, and I have a master's degree, of course, bachelor's and master's degree in engineering. And I am an immigrant myself in Canada, but I'm a Canadian citizen now. So you can expect that when we deal with your cases, we would bring a professional and analytic approach with a high level of expertise and experience. In terms of years of experience in business and immigration, I would say more than 10 years. So you can expect that, we'll bring on board a lot of professionalism in your application. Personally, anyways, of course, some of my partners, like for some of you who know, I have senior partners like Mr. Muni. He has over 30 years of experience in business and immigration. So now we're talking about work permits in Canada, right? For some of you, you may say, why choose to work in Canada? So I've kind of broken this down into economic and social benefits, but sometimes it's really hard to find that fine line between and distinguish between whether it's economic or social because they're kind of intertwined. But again, if it's not that, should I say correct or accurate in terms of my classification, pardon me, but this is the best I could do. So in terms of economic benefits, um, basically, when you get a work permit to come to Canada and work, you have the opportunity to enhance your skills and job opportunities. You might also have increased earning potentials because, in Canada, there is a minimum wage in Ontario, the province where I am. It's about $15.50 per hour now. And obviously, with higher skilled jobs, there are higher earning potentials for such jobs. Um, Also is interesting because, we do deal with a lot of clients from Nigeria because I'm originally Nigerian. Um, with the currency exchange rate nowadays, right? For somebody who was, say, maybe earning 1 million naira a few months ago, in terms of value, that same 1 million naira today is, if let's just say 1 million naira, I think was around, I'm trying to do a very quick calculation. I'm getting rusty now. Maybe let's say around five, no, it won't be up to $5,000. Maybe about, $4,000, just to be very, very rough in my estimation. That same figure today, could be less than about 3 to 2,000 Canadian dollars. So, you have that stability in the currency of your salary, basically when you earn in dollars. So that's what I was trying to explain there. And then you are able to gain global experience, right? I find, I used to work in the oil and gas sector. And you'll find that for some of the orgas, back then that were working together, they would say, and of course, we would always complain about salaries and the disparity between the people, the so-called expats and, the locals. And some of the experts would say, how about you consider? Okay, so I was talking about gaining global experience. So I was saying some of the experts then will say, how about you go abroad and, go and get some international experience. And then when you come back, you can earn higher. I mean, it's for real because then some of the Nigerians in our team then who maybe had a second citizenship or had worked several years abroad and came back were being paid as expats. So that global experience could really turn to be economic in terms of dollar or figure in terms of naira that you'll be able to get even if you decide to go back to Nigeria after working in Canada. So you're able to access the world as well, right? You come on a work permit, you're able to transition to PR. You will be able to get opportunities. There are many people who become Canadian and decide to move to the US to work, even for higher dollar figures. So that access will be there. Social benefits, I'll say safety, security, higher standards of living. I need not say more about that. Pathway to permanent residency and citizenship with your Canadian experience. Under the Express Entry, for many of you who are familiar with Express Entry, there are three streams under there: the Federal Skilled Worker, the Canadian Experience Class, and the Federal Skilled Trades. Mostly, the Federal Skilled Worker Program, which was the pathway I came to Canada with. That's the pathway I became a PR through, and then now I'm a citizen. For some people who come to work in Canada temporarily and study in Canada, they're then eligible for the Canadian Experience Class. And under that category of the Express Entry, if you don't have Canadian experience in terms of education or work, you're not eligible. And interestingly, I think it was the year of COVID 2020, because the government wasn't going to meet their quota for immigration, the numbers that their targets, they dropped the score under that stream to 75. It has never happened in the history of Canadian immigration. And yeah, so being eligible under that Canadian experience is quite a benefit. Um, Cultural exposure and language skills. Again, coming to Canada will make you exposed to other people's culture. Like it is so diverse, especially in the Greater Toronto area where we're at. It's so culturally diverse. Sometimes you wonder, like, am I in Canada, or some sort of mosaic of a country? Because then, there are just all different cultures and people. And in multinational companies, for instance, being culturally exposed is a really, really big factor. And then language skills, again, because you would have to use English at a higher level. It's just, natural that you will develop those skills and get better by interacting with different people. And then if you come on a work permit, you're able to come with your family. So again, not just for yourself, but your family would have their benefits of having those higher standards of living, education, healthcare. They also get citizenship and then job opportunities for them as well when they grow older. Okay, so moving on to the next slides, just to kind of show you what we'll be talking about today. We'll have an introduction, requirements of work visas, what next, after you've been working in Canada for a while, conclusions, and then you'll have the opportunity to ask me all of your questions. So save them and you can drop them as they come to mind in the Q&A section. So had on this slide is a little bit, congested, but I'll try to make sense of it. So, work visas, beware of scammers. I cannot say that loud enough. Like one of the biggest, challenges with work permits, visas for Canada is scammers. Like it's like a cash cow for many, many of them. So ensure to do your due diligence. If it is too good to be true, it likely is a scam. So look at this screenshot that I have put there. I think it was just less than a week that somebody shared this with me. And it says the Canadian government on the top right. The Canadian government is recruiting in 2023. It's open to all individuals who want to work in Canada. Canada needs 450,000 workers in 2023. That is not even correct. The targets set by the government for permanent residents is around 500,000, and they normally would release that at the beginning of every year. So they'll just pick like a little bit of correct information everywhere and every here and there, and then they put it into a post. And now look at this juicy offer by these scammers. Travel expense, housing, accommodation, everything is covered. Like which employer realistically covers all of that? So the requirements in this particular scam post says applicants from 16 and above can speak basic English or French. Of course, English and French are the official languages in Canada. Benefits of a program, instant work permit. Like they won't even do any checks, no admissibility checks. Like it is too good to be true. Do not fall for such. And then look at the link, right? HTTPS, FTK. In fact, when I saw the FTK, it kind of looked like fake. Like just the T was different, right? The T just turned into an A, and you know that it's fake. The Canadian government will not use such links. So, and the Canadian government, will not do such a recruitment, right? So do your due diligence. If you want to find verifiable information, go to canada.ca. If the Canadian government is recruiting at all in any shape or form like this, the first place to find out will be canada.ca. So be careful. People lose a lot of money. Like they would say they paid 1 million naira, 3 million naira, whatever it is, to some people for a job offer. They said, and then sometimes they would even go as far as printing a decision letter. And in one case in particular, like this person who fell victim, she's educated, right? They actually submitted an application, but they submitted an application um, under the LMIA exempt stream. And I'm like, okay, so LMIA exempt, what is making you exempt, or what's making the job offer or the employer exempt? Who is the employer? You don't even know the employer. They just tell you we're doing a work permit application for you. And that almost jeopardized a legitimate permanent residence application that she was going to do, further down the line. So be careful. Do not let, anybody jeopardize your future applications that could happen. Okay. Uh, Understand that. Okay. Talking about that, there's a small tip I put here, right? Like there's lots of information on canada.ca. And this is an example where you can find um, every employer who has obtained an LMI on a spreadsheet, right? This is the link, open.canada.ca, data, blah, blah, blah. But if you obviously, I don't expect anybody to, you can make a screenshot, try to see that website later. But basically, if you put it into Google and you say temporary foreign worker program, positive LMI employers list, you'll see for all of the years, including 2023, and they're updating it regularly. So verify any LMIs that anybody just brings up and tell you that this is an approved LMI, blah, blah, blah. Do not fall victim. Keep your money if, you know, or do charity with it if you really wish to give it away. So, but do not give it to these miscreants and scammers. Understand that it is possible to get a job offer, but be prepared to do the work. Okay. Okay. What are the requirements to obtain a work visa, right? In order to be able to apply for a work permit, there are things that need to be in place, including a valid job offer, right? I cannot overemphasize the fact that the job offer has to be valid, right? Um, the job offer can be valid with an approved LMIA, a valid LMIA, or it could be LMIA exempt. Only very few people have qualify for the exemption, but I will come to that. Um, and even then, when the job is LMIA exempt, the employer has to submit the job offer through the employer portal, which is a government's website. So it's like a replacement for an LMI. In an LMI, the employer has to pay like $1,000. In this other exemption category, through the employer portal, the employer pays about $230. So there is an A number that has to, like, there are ways to really verify if a job offer is valid. If you speak to an authorized representative that knows what they're doing, like I've had people who come to us and say, I got this job offer. Is it real? Is it legitimate? Right? And we will do that, let you know if it's real for free. Okay, so the job offer must be offered by an eligible Canadian employer that has obtained a positive LMIA or the job is exempt. Now, it's kind of saying the same thing, but the main difference here is the employer has to be eligible. There are employers that have become ineligible because they are legitimate Canadian businesses, but they have abused the temporary foreign worker program, maybe by collecting money from the applicants, or they abused the applicants or didn't pay them their agreed salaries. So they would be in the ineligible list of employers. It's also publicly available. If you just go on Google now, ineligible Canadian employers, you'll see them. Because again, Canada, is a good country, but not full of saints, right? There are scammers inside Canada, so they may even be a business in Canada, but they may have become ineligible or whatever it is. I wouldn't mention the country but I can say that there is a specific country in Canada of Canadians who are very specialized in that. It's scamming people for like relating to immigration and all of that. But I wouldn't do that. We're not racist, so we wouldn't name them. Um, the job must be paid. It has to be continuous and it has to be full time. Full time is minimum 30 hours per week. Non-seasonal in that There are some seasonal, like there are special programs like for the agric stream. It's a seasonal type of business and job offer, and they have their own pathway. But in general, it can be that the business is only operational 6 months in a year, and they're not operational the remaining of the 6 years. So, and for all work permits, even if it's a tier 4 or 5, you can get a work permit, but it won't lead to permanent residency. It can only lead to permanent residency if it's in tier 0 to 3. You can use it as a first step to come in. So if you get a job offer legitimately, right, which you could, you want to say, okay, will this get me to PR? Even if you won't, you could use it temporarily to come in. But the sooner you come in, you need to start checking, okay, this NOC code has to be 0 to 3 for me to be able to use that job offer and the Canadian experience for permanent residency. So ensure that it's also a job that you are capable to do, because you might get an LMIA, but that will not give you work permits. The work permit would only be approved by IRCC if the job, like you have the ability, the education, and the experience to do the job. You're capable to do the job. So, I mean, I'm sure you can. I'm trying to see if I need to explain it further, but basically, have the education and the experience. Say, for instance, you studied banking and finance. Could you work in an admin role? Yeah, the likelihood that you can will. But you couldn't have studied public relations and then you say you're getting a job as a bookkeeper. It can't work. The work permit will be refused. Okay. So proof of English is not compulsory, but it may be advantageous or necessary. If the officer feels like, we need this person to demonstrate that they can speak English, or that, say, for instance, you get a truck driver job offer, could can you read the signs, right, on the streets and all of that? They may want to verify it. For most of our clients from Nigeria, because they've had prior education, most likely at a higher level, um, they usually don't need to demonstrate their English. But before you can use that job offer to transition to PR, you must then do a language test. Okay? Now, the hardest part of, getting a work visa is getting the job offer. And we get like what, 80-90% of people always asking, do you help with job offers? Can you get me a job? Well, we don't. These are ways that we think you can legitimately get a job offer. Use your network, your Canadian network. Even in Canada, even if you had a PR or whatever status it is that you have, if you don't network, you won't get a job. So Canadian job market is really, really heavy on networking to get jobs, recommendations. In fact, employers would pay, because guess what? And as a business owner, I can tell you for a fact, right? I would rather an employee that is excelling at their job bring somebody like them, like they say, like birds, flock together, right? So the employer may have friends who are equally as sharp as they are, and if they would recommend somebody to that employer, the employer doesn't want to waste time paying time and money paying recruiters or even training them for like 2-3 months and then finding out that they're not even worth it. So if you have friends who are currently in jobs, the employer will pay them to recommend somebody to them. And if that your network who's working in a Canadian job is doing a really good job and they can really vouch that you can do the same, the employer might be willing to go through the hurdle of going through the LMIA process for you. So use your network, use your network, use your network. I cannot repeat it enough. And if you don't have one, build one. How do you build one? This is not a networking class, but you can, do your search, join groups. We'll talk a little bit about that. And, go out of your way to really meet people. Okay. Consider obtaining a visitor visa to come into Canada and seek opportunities, especially now and until February 2025. The Canadian government is allowing visitors who are in Canada accept an offer of employment from a Canadian employer, of course, valid job offer, and apply for a work permit from inside Canada. Note that if you do come in on a visitor visa, you typically are not allowed to change your status to worker or study. And even up till now, you cannot come into Canada as a visitor and submit a study permit application. It would be refused. I still got a call from somebody just 2 days ago saying, "Oh, I apply," and it's somebody that has a valid visitor visa, has many travel experience. In fact, they did not just refuse; they gave her a letter to say, "You must leave Canada now." And that kind of spooked her. Like, what did I do wrong? I said the major single thing you did wrong was submitting a study permit application from within Canada. And she so-called said, "Oh, I worked with somebody who was experienced." Of course, experienced is not somebody who's kind of like a quack doctor, right? So, but I said, well, that was one major mistake, right? But I can't speak to the rest of the application because then, apart from the wrong place of application, that's what we call it in immigration, they could have also done several other mistakes, right? Did they cost time with her purpose her purpose, a study purpose, study plan in terms of, syncing with her career prospects and all of that in her country of residence and all of that. So, um, if you do come in on a visitor visa and until February 2025, you're able to apply for a work permit from inside Canada, but still ensure it is done properly, not just getting the place of application right, but being able to come in certainly can open up opportunities. That friend that is working in the company may book a meeting between, you and his employer. You might be able to bring in an authorized representative like us to make a case for you and to show the employer that it is doable. You can actually, they can file an LMI and a work permit for you. So, and the employer may be willing to do all of that just to be able to keep you as a talent. One big pain, I should say, of many Canadian employers is, and it is real, you see it all over the internet where they're saying, oh, Canada needs people, there's so much employment. And then when you start looking for the job, it's like, where is all this employment that they're always talking about? The employment is there. The employers are just being really careful to pick the candidates. And that is where distinguishing yourselves, if you ever get an opportunity to have an interview or going through your network, coming in on a visitor visa will go to show you as that distinguished candidate for the position. Okay. Consider other parts, I would say, right? Other parts, including the visitor visa I talked about, get you in. It's like I say, get your foot in the door first. And then if you come in as a student, for instance, you get a postgraduate work permit. Note that if you come in for a study of 2 years, at a public post-secondary school, that's when you get the 3 years postgraduate work permit. You really want to maximize the tenure of your postgraduate work permit. If you only come in on a 1 year student visa, 1 year program of study, you would only get a 1 year postgraduate work permit. But if you come in for a program that is 2 years or longer, you'll get a 3 year postgraduate work permit. Within that time, you're able to work with any Canadian employer. And if you are that quality candidate, trust me, your employment prospects are, really unlimited, I should say. And I have one of such students. She's in her late 40s. I think she was about 48 when she came in. Um, she got, and luckily she also qualified under the temporary policy that allowed students, be able to work 40 hours per week or more than 40, should I say up to 40 hours or more per week while, being a student. Note that while as a student, your maximum allowable work hours per week is 20 hours. During the school holidays, you can work up to 40 hours, I mean, more than 40 hours or more than the 20 hours. 40 hours typically is a regular 9 to 5 here full time. So, but this student actually got a full-time employment with a multinational company, like within 2 months of landing in Canada, and she could actually take up the full-time employment. So, yeah, coming in to study, she didn't think she was going to get that full-time role, and she did get it. And then even if you don't get it while studying, when you have your postgraduate work permits, again, ensure it's a public post-secondary school because that's what would make you eligible for postgraduate work permits. Some private schools, very few, may have specific programs that still qualify for postgraduate work permit, but always check. Like I say, Canada.ca, for instance, you can go and say GLI list. You see the ones that are eligible for PGWP. Not all are. And on the other hand, you can create your own job. By creating your own job, we do this for many of our business immigration clients. If you have up to say $150,000 to $250,000 that you can invest in a business, you can create your own job and offer yourself a job. That said, those are people who are looking to come through the business immigration route. On the other hand, if you come in as a student or as a visitor, you may also start a business small, possibly in partnership with somebody else or even alone. It's also possible that you don't put in a lot of investment at once, and you might be able to kind of grow that business to the extent where that business can then employ you. So that is an option. In terms of seeking jobs, from Canadian employers, join Canadian associations, talking about building your network. That is one way you can do. You can do that. And unions in your area of expertise. And in terms of unions, I'll use an example of a friend of mine. He's not our client because he only just found out that I was in Canada, after he got here. But his experience in Canada is that he does POP, the types they use for ceilings, suspended ceilings, and all of that, and walls and all of that. So he joined the union for plasterers, right? That's the way they call it, right? Plasterers. Um, so he joined that union. He came in he's been coming in on visits, and the union recommended him for a position with an employer. So because the employers, some jobs are, part of the union, they would have to offer it to the union first before they can offer it to an outsider. And sometimes some employers genuinely just cannot find a Canadian to take the job. And the union recommended him, and that's how he got the job offer. Voila. He's here with his family now, just by doing that extra networking and making efforts to join associations and unions. In fact, I invited him to join this session, but he couldn't because he doesn't finish up until after 3. And yeah, we'll be doing a session with him where we're starting our podcast very soon. So ensure to look out for it on YouTube, and he can share how he did it, and many others as well, like a nurse as well. She got a job offer before she got here. She's an internationally trained nurse. There's also something coming up for internationally trained nurses, but unfortunately, they cannot be in Nigeria when they apply because the employers are not willing to wait for the for people from Nigeria, and for whatever reason, it's not racism, but I can imagine why they would say we can take Nigerians, but not the ones who are currently in Nigeria. So if you're an internationally trained nurse, or an internationally trained nurse, maybe a Nigerian nurse, for instance, who's resident anywhere else but Nigeria, you can tell them to contact us. Something is coming up, and they'll be able to get a job offer from Canadian employers who want to hire them as caregivers. And we will be releasing that information shortly. Now, in terms of searching for jobs in general, let Google be your friend, right? Search for jobs, search for jobs, search for jobs. The jobs are out there, and some of them would even say, I already have an LMI. So consider jobs that are in remote and northern parts of Canada, not jobs in Toronto, because most likely there would be lots of people to take up the jobs in Toronto. Some of those places are cold though, right? But again, if you really want to come to Canada, that employer may just be the one who gets you in first, and then you could, move on from there afterwards and maybe support your PR to Canada. But yes, some remote and northern parts have more jobs vacant than the cities. Be relentless in your search. Apply, apply, apply. So I'm going to take some moment to talk about LMIs. LMIs are labor market impact assessments. Again, this information is, you can say, oh, but it's a Canadian employer that needs to know about LMIs. But you as an applicant, if you also know, you can enlighten the employer. Because when a lot of people who say, but I applied, but the moment they found out that I don't have a work permit in Canada, they dropped off. But if you are able to quickly enlighten them to say, I know somebody who can do this for you, it's not that complex, they might be willing to actually listen more and proceed, especially if you're a quality candidate, they may be willing to listen to you. So what is the labor market impact assessment, LMIA? It's an assessment to determine the impact of hiring a foreign worker on the Canadian labor market. The purpose of the LMIA is to ensure that the foreign worker will not negatively impact the labor market, and there are no Canadians or permanent residents who are available to fill the job. And the employer must submit an LMIA application before a foreign worker can apply for his or her work permit. Employers are required to demonstrate that they have made sufficient efforts to recruit Canadian citizens or permanent residents for the job. And believe it or not, even though it seems like, why won't there be any Canadians or PRs to take up the job? For real, Canadian employers are struggling to get capable hands to do the jobs that they want, especially in some specific low-skilled jobs and tech jobs and high-skilled jobs. And by low-skilled jobs, I don't necessarily mean that they have to clean the floor, right? It could be caregivers, it could be, or even skilled. We call it skilled or trades, like plasterers, like I said earlier, painters, carpenters, whatever it is, or any other job for that matter. It could even be an admin assistant, right? Believe it or not, maybe because the wage is not very high, right? Or whatever it is, they may just not find a Canadian who's willing to take up the job or to work in restaurants or whatever it is. Okay, moving on. The LMI assessment process looks like this for a Canadian employer. The Canadian employer is the one to apply for the LMI. You are to apply, as the applicants are to apply for the work permit. So again, if you're using your network, some of your friends, family may have a business and legitimately they might be able to offer you the job. So the employer has to draft the job description. What will the foreign worker be doing, right? Um, they need to create an advertisement and run that advert for 30 days. And after 30 days, obviously, they may even find Canadians who apply, but are they qualified to do the job? Do they have the enough experience, and so on? So the candidate will be assessed, and then they may not qualify or meet the requirements of the job. And it is up to their authorized representatives that they're working with to really package that right. And there'll be business legitimacy documents within the business, like their previous should I say payroll deductions, that's what we call it, or evidence of payroll deductions, we call it PD7As, or other business legitimacy documents. Have they been employing people before they now say they want to hire a foreign worker? I find sometimes, maybe some of the applicants have friends who run businesses here, but those businesses are not paying anybody. They don't have any employees. That can work for an LMI. But it may only be 2 or 3 employees that they have. They might be able to hire 1 or 2 more, right? So application forms will need to be filled. The application will be submitted for processing. There might be an interview with the officer. One of the most recent ones we did was for a restaurant supervisor. I think if the guy really looked hard enough, he might find a restaurant supervisor in Canada, but ultimately he wanted that particular person because, he knows that if that person is in that role, they will kind of just have less stress, right? So ultimately, other candidates who are Canadians just didn't qualify, and he was able to obtain the LMI, and the applicants in Nigeria who he was looking to hire has now applied for his work permit, and we're waiting on that. And there was no interview on that particular LMI application. That was just what I wanted to point out, because even the government knows that those skilled workers are just not available. So they didn't even bother with an approval. They just approved it within, I think, about 3 to 4 weeks. And hence, with that approved LMI, the applicant can then apply for a work permit. Now, some jobs are LMI exempt. And like I said earlier, this LMI exemption is what some of these scammers would say, oh, you're LMI exempt. So you need to know what is LMI exempt, right? Which jobs are LMI exempt, not all, right? So LMI exempt job offers refers to positions that do not require an LMI to be obtained by the employer. But like I said, even the employer still needs to submit the job offer through the government's website. Um, that's the employer portal. So some applicants, who may qualify under the international agreements, such as CUSMA, which is the Canada-US Mexico agreement, some CETA, like the Canada-European one, and like intercompany transfers is another category. If especially for mostly our business clients, but if you work for a big multinational company or big corporation, basically who has revenue over $1 million, it doesn't even necessarily have to be like super, super big, like Shell or whatever. It's the same program that the likes of Shell can use to transfer their worker from Nigeria to Canada. But even a small company in Nigeria, maybe an IT company, whatever kind of company, could decide they want to have a Nigerian branch. So that's another opportunity where you might be able to, if you kind of pitch it to the top management, the directors of the business where the companies where you work, they might, be able to transfer you as a key talent, as a key employee to start up their branch here in Canada. Or even if they transfer a senior manager who's going to start up, you could be transferred as a key talent to come and work and be some of the pioneer members of starting up the Canadian company. So that's another LMIA exempt route. There's the one we call a Canadian interest, formerly C12, but now they've kind of broken them down into several other exemption codes like C61, 62, like that. So workers here are being hired for jobs that have significant benefits to Canada or Canadian interest. So under that Canadian interest, significant benefits, we can also apply for an LMIA exempt work permit. Then international experience and youth exchange programs. Again, this is limited to some countries. Nigeria is not one of them, unfortunately, but like if you maybe have a second citizenship or maybe even your children, right? Maybe they're citizens of the US or UK, whatever it is, they might be able to come. And usually people lower than the age of 30 or 35, depending on the countries, they have like different ones. They have working holiday, blah, blah, blah. But it's only for some different countries. Like one of the ladies that I said they submitted an LMI exempt job work permit for her. I think it was under this international experience when clearly Nigeria is not even on the list. So the more you know, the more you'll be able to avoid those pitfalls. They won't tell you they want to submit an application, an LMI exempt work permit application for you under IEC. It's just not possible. You can tell them Nigeria is not even on that list. So that's the reason we're sharing this much information to you. You can say it's like a little bit of information overload, but pardon me, the more you know, the more you'll be able to avoid all these scams. So spousal work permits, if you're single and a Canadian, you have a Canadian spouse, you might be able to apply for an open work permit for you. PGWPs, again, if you graduate from a Canadian post-secondary institution, you might be eligible for a postgraduate work permit if you do a program of 2 years or longer, or a master's degree, even if it's not up to 2 years. Some masters are 1 year, some are like 18 months. You'll still get a 3-year a 3-year postgraduate work permit, and you're able to work with any Canadian employer without an LMI during that period. Certain skilled workers, again, such as the ones under Kuzma and SETA, may also be exempt from LMIA, certain because not all occupations, if you're maybe a citizen of any of the European countries or US or Mexico, and some specific occupations under there also are LMIA exempt. And then the Francophone Mobility Program, if you are French speaking, you also might be eligible for that LMI exemption, but it has to be outside of Quebec. Now, in conclusion, here are my immigration success tips. Don't face one direction when it comes to immigration. Keep an open mind. A lot of people come and they just say, I want a job offer. I want a work permit. That's not the only way you can come to Canada, right? It could be permanent residency. It could be study. Whatever it is that gets you here, you are then able to be able to get the authorization to work. So keep an open mind. Let us assess your eligibility, and who knows, there might just be other pathways that gets you that eligibility to work. The other thing I'll say is take every application seriously, even if it's a visitor visa, because one thing we find with many people is they've submitted one visitor visa application 5 years ago, 2 years ago. The agent, I should say, and sometimes when they refer to us, they call us agents. We are not agents. We are licensed, authorized, paid representatives. Only, I'll say broadly, 3 categories of people are able to get paid for doing immigration work. RCICs, designated by the College of Immigration and Citizenship Canada, CICC, immigration lawyers, and Quebec Notary Public. They are the only ones authorized to get paid. And it's even on the Canadian website. Again, there's nothing you can find on Canada.ca. If anybody is claiming to be a licensed immigration consultant, put their name, put their firm name, you'll be able to pull it up on the CICC website. Just go to Google, find an immigration consultant. You see CICC, you can put my name, Adewumi Odegbami, right? And if anybody, the other type of scam I should say is that somebody else will now come and say they are Loft Immigration or whatever. Again, Loft Immigration only has one phone number. If you want to verify that it is us that sent you a receipt, an invoice, whatever it is, you can see that's our handle on Instagram. It cannot be Loft Immigration 1. It cannot be Loft Immigration Nigeria. We don't have any other pages except for this. So do your due diligence. It could be any other immigration consultant. There are many, many licensed, authorized paid representatives and lawyers. Ensure you do your due diligence, contact them on their pages, and verify that that information is from them. There's a lot of impersonation, right, of authorized people, licensed people. Okay. Don't leave your application in the hands of unqualified agents. If, for instance, they could forget to declare And if you choose to do, you do so at your own risk, but at least review whatever it is they're submitting for you. This comes up all the time. They would forget to mention, say, a refusal, right? You may have even honestly forgotten, but what we do when we work with clients, we go back to the client and say, think very deeply. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, it's still in the record. Canada, for instance, shares information with about 5 different countries: UK, France, Netherlands, Australia. I can't remember the fifth one, but 5 countries. And if you do not declare a refusal from one of these countries, they can easily give you a 5-year ban, right? So do not take it lightly and take it seriously, because again, after the visitor visa, you may need to do a work permit, you may need to do a PR application. So just ensure you take very great care with every little application that you submit. Work with an authorized representative. Follow us on all our channels at Loft Immigration, Instagram, YouTube. We're putting out information all the time. Add us on WhatsApp. And just to encourage you with immigration in general, don't give up. If you really want to come to Canada, I'll say don't give up. And I'll use myself as an example. I have applied to Canada something like, what year was that? 2008, 2009, back to back, 3 times for study permit, and I was refused. Kind of why I would say I do immigration now, but here I am today. Still came back, went to the UK for my master's back then, but still came back to Canada, and now I'm a citizen, right? So do not give up. It's achievable, irrespective of whether you've been refused in the past or not. So these are some of our testimonials for work permits. Josephine, was her work permit extension. They got an LMIA work permit and came into Canada. The one in the middle there is Ambrose. He created his own job and he got his business visitor visa to be able to come in. He has an approved LMIA, and we're just going to go to the border to flagpole. That's what we call it, to get his work permit issued on the spot on the same day. Um, yeah, and then those are other people who were able to come to Canada as well with their approved work permits. So follow us and see many, many of our testimonials on Instagram. And for consultations, contact us via email, call us, or I would say preferably WhatsApp us. But if you do call, we'll still direct you to WhatsApp, just because we want to be able to chat with you, send you some questions. You'll respond with some answers, because we need to kind of get an idea of what your profile is. Then we can advise what immigration pathway you might be eligible for. And in general, for, should I say, people who have children between 21 and 29, I know sometimes immigration is not top of mind for them, and you, the parents, are the ones thinking of immigrating now. Those young ones, under the express entry, would qualify easily for permanent residency. And if they come in, it could be a pathway for others as well to be able to come in. So timely information, when it comes to Canada immigration, is important. So share this information with them, have them contact us on WhatsApp. Let's give them a free evaluation, and we can guide them from start to finish on what they need to do. If you do qualify and you're eligible for any programs, we'll offer you a quick evaluation call with me directly to be able to assess your eligibility and advice. So thank you very much. If you do have some questions, now is the time for us to go through it. Let me see what questions. Oh, somebody's saying that I'm an intelligent person. Oh, my head is swelling like we would say in Nigeria. Thank you. Update us when you'll have another session. Well, we're not certain. We've done a webinar on study. We've done something on business. We've done this now on work permits. All those recordings are going to be on YouTube. So again, Loft Immigration on YouTube. Go there, watch them. This will be post-processed and we will put it up there. Thank you, thank you. Theophilus says I'm a fantastic educator. Yeah, I kind of have a passion for kind of teaching, but well, I can say I'm teaching too now. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Everybody just giving me kudos. Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll just go to the Q&A section of this webinar, and then let's go through them. Okay. Somebody says, can one get a work permit? Ikechukwu says, can one get a work permit from outside while holding a visitor's visa? Yes, you can. You can do your application from outside. You can do it from inside up until February 2025. So that's your answer. How can I improve? Florence says, how can I improve my chances of finding an employer who is willing to go through the LMIA process to hire me? Well, I would say we discuss that, in a little bit more detail, but use Google, use your network. I strongly, strongly believe in network. Um, and even for Canadians who have, status to work in Canada, it's really about networking and just putting your best foot out there and apply, apply, apply. Like, don't get tired. Don't do 10 and say, oh, I've applied to so many, I've given up. No, it doesn't work like that. So apply relentlessly and one will come through. Okay, so thank you, Florence, for that question. Somebody says, anonymous, can I apply for visiting at the same time have an application for study and for PMP? Does this pose any immigration refusal possibilities? I would say you can apply for a visitor's visa. There's what we call dual intent, right? Study is also a temporary status. But then I'll say it depends, right? Your purpose, it will be important to kind of be consistent, but at the same time, it's also possible that your purpose may change. How much time has passed? Do you have dual intent? Like, I'll give you an example of dual intent where we had a candidate who had an express entry profile in the poll, and IRCC, right, is the same government agency. They would see her profile, right? And she also wanted to come in as a visitor to write her MCC exams to qualify as a medical doctor. And we just had to address that dual intent in the application, where we had to say, well, she's an intending permanent resident applicant, but she, will come in, do our exams and go back. This is the reason doing the exams will be beneficial for her permanent residence and settling in and qualifying for her job later, right? So in law, there's what we call reasonableness, right? And it just has to be reasonable. That's what I would say there. Somebody says the number two question there was, can I truly get an LMI job and switch a visiting visa? The answer is yes. And even with a visiting visa, if you have an approved LMI, what we will do sometimes to get the job offer quickly is to drive to the border, Canada-US border, do a turnaround and come back to Canada. Hence the name flag pulling. Basically, it's like imagine a flag, and on one side there's the Canadian flag, and on a pole, sorry. On one side there's a Canadian flag, and on the other there's the US side. So it's like kind of just swinging around the pole. So you go to the Canadian US side, turn around, come back to the Canadian side, and you get readmitted, even without a US visa, I should say. And you get readmitted as a visitor with that approved LMI, and Canada would always admit you back as a visitor. Um, Florence says, are there any alternative pathways or immigration programs that visitor visa holders can explore? I should say that other than work permits, visitors also are able to apply for a study permit. They just cannot put Canada as their country of residence. They would need to put their country of residence, right? Wherever it is they're living as their country of residence. But we've done it before, and the candidate was still in Canada when she was approved. Her mailing address would be her Canadian address. In terms of her travel history, it would show that she's still in Canada, but you just do not say that your country of residence is Canada. At the minute you say your country of residence is Canada, even though you're physically in Canada at that time, that application will be automatically refused. So you can transition to a study permit without exiting Canada, but ensure that you do it right. Somebody asks, and Marie says, I'm interested in knowing how to get a job with visitor's visa. We've talked a little bit about how do you get a job offer, so I would not repeat that. What else? Somebody else says, if one spouse is a student, how does the spousal open work permit work? Oh, yeah. So that is an interesting one. If you have a spouse who has a work permit or a study permit, you are LMIA exempt. And that LMIA exemption, I think, is C42. you are eligible for an open work permit. But it's not unusual that IRCC may refuse that application if it's not properly done. So again, take great care to ensure that that spousal open work permit is adequately done. And some of the things I would say, and it's not always a blanket answer, it depends on the profile of the applicant. But basically, will the spouse who's coming in, because the main person who's here who has a legitimate reason in Canada is a student, they may not be working full time. How will they support themselves before the spouse who's coming in on a spousal open work permit will be able to transition to PR, I mean to a work permit or get a job, I should say, sorry. So they want to be able to know how will you support yourself? Have you made adequate preparations for them to find a house that they'll live in and so on, right? So are all these work visa requirements the same requirements to apply for a spousal open work permit? No. Again, it's kind of exempt, a little bit more straightforward, but still requires to um, take great care doing that. Somebody else says, can one also go into Canada with a conference visa and still seek to get a job offer to change to work? Yes, because you may be visiting Canada for whatever reason to visit family, to sightsee, to do whatever it is, and you may just get a job offer from a Canadian employer. And yes, until February 2025, you're allowed to declare Canada as your country of residence at that time and actually switch to a work permit. But then again, it's got to be legitimate. It's still got to be done right. You still have to show that you have the capability to do the job and all those requirements still applies. Can I see a construction company to work for with visa sponsorship as interior designer? So when you say visa sponsorship, I'll say be careful because when you say sponsorship, that is where all the scammers really come into the picture, right? Yes, and an employer will pay for the LMIA, and by law, they should pay for the LMIA and all the associated fees with it. An employer might pay for your work permits, right? Especially for some really big um, employers, like they recruit sometimes up to 100 people, and they're mostly like all these manufacturing companies. One of such companies that I'm aware of is a meat processing plant in Manitoba, Maple something something, Maple something. I don't know what their full name is, but bottom line, they would recruit 50, 100 people at a time, and they would pay for such things. But sponsorship doesn't necessarily mean that they'll pay for your accommodation, pay for your flight. They might pay if it's a low wage, but again, just to ensure that the job is legitimate. That would be my very valid advice. So in construction, I don't know, it might be possible, but anything is possible, but just to ensure that it is legitimate. Somebody talked about the religious worker. Yeah, that was one we didn't touch, but it's an LMIA exempt route. If you must get a job offer from a Canadian employer, a Canadian religious organization. It cannot be volunteering. They have to pay you salary for the job offer. And the employer, that's the church now in Canada or mosque or whatever religious organization that is inviting you or offering you the job, will need to submit your offer of employment through the employer portal and pay the $230 fee, but you're LMIA exempt. Okay. So if you need more information regarding that, yeah, call us, WhatsApp us for a consultation. Which parts are the northern parts? Okay, so um I'll say do a little bit of research, um but basically, Toronto is one of their biggest cities. Quebec is a big city. So you can just exclude those big cities. And when you do search for jobs, the location of the employer will be put on the job ad, and you'll be able to say, you can Google and say, say for instance, Kelowna, BC. Is Kelowna, BC a remote part of Canada, for instance? And again, just remote or not, in fact, sometimes just apply. You never know. As long as you have the capability, the experience, the skills to do the job, put your best foot forward. It might just, be yours. Oh, wow. This question is loaded. Amina Bako. Number one, to qualify for PR, do you need just the job in tier 0 to 3 only, or it also has to be an LMI job? Okay, so if you, and I don't know, because I think if I recall, Amina is in Canada. She might have a temporary status in Canada. So again, when you take questions out of context, I don't want to answer wrongly, but let me try to answer like this. Tier 0 to 3 jobs are the only jobs eligible under express entry. All right. Um, if the employer must, so there is some extra points called arranged employment points under the express entry. And if you get a typical job offer, you'll be able to claim an extra 50 points. And for you to claim that extra 50 arranged employment points, the employer ought to have given you an LMIA prior to you getting your work permit. So the employer has to be named on your work permit for you to be able to claim those extra 50 points under the express entry. But if you're in Canada, say on a postgraduate work permit, and you are working in a role 0 to 3, you don't even need those extra 50 points in some cases. It will be other points like age, education, language, and all of that. And you can claim that work experience, right? 1 year, 2 years, however long you've been working in that job under your regular work experience points, but just not under the arranged employment points. So again, that question, depending on the context, the LMI points of 50 points is what needs to be 0 to 3 or any job at all for you to claim the work experience points under express entry. Number 2, if you do the care pathway for PR, can you still switch careers to a tech role? Yes, you can. If you do the care pathway for PR and if you do become a permanent resident, after you become permanent resident, you're not tied to, say, an employer specific work permit that you got anymore. You can do anything. You can change occupation. You can do anything you choose to do. Just to put it in perspective, right? Like I told you, I came to Canada under the federal skilled worker myself, under the express entry, and my tier was engineering management. I'm not doing engineering management today. So once you become a permanent resident, you can switch to do whatever it is you want to do. So you're not tied to the occupation that you came in through. But if you do have an occupation restricted work permit, while you are on your work permit, you are only restricted to that occupation. And if you have an employer specific work permit, you're only restricted to that employer. Okay, which is what you typically get in an LMIA based work permit. But if you do then want to change employers, you can get the new employer to give you a new LMIA and you need to apply for a new work permit. Okay, number 3, I just finished a PGD. I'll try to shorten my responses to this because I think I'm getting too technical and I don't even know if we'll be able to get through everything at this point. So pardon me if you don't understand very well, but I'll try to breeze through. I just finished a PGD program in business analytics, and I have noticed my job role is not among the tier for PR pathway. I'll say book a paid consultation, one-on-one. Let's look into your specific profile so that we can advise, because I don't want to be able to, I don't want to give a wrong advice until it's not there, but I would think it should be there, right? I don't think it should not be there if it's something like business analytics. Anyways, number 4, it's been difficult getting a job in Canada as my PGWP is just for a year. Oh, sorry about that. The kind of warning I was warning people. 1 year PGWP, too short. I don't advise anybody to go for it. Try to do a program 2 years or longer or a master's so you can get the 3 years maximum PGWP. She says she's been doing several interviews, but I keep getting the unfortunate emails. Well, I would say use your network and see what else you might be able to do. Okay. Another question. Can you have our WhatsApp number? It's right there. +1 416 4921 222. Okay. What are the likely challenges a pregnant woman face during journey from Nigeria to Canada? What to avoid? What are the benefits of giving birth in Canada on visitor visa? What benefits to give birth in Canada on a visitor visa as a pregnant woman is the child gets a Canadian passport, same like you would in the US. But challenges, I cannot advise because again, it depends. Did you get your visa to say you are coming to give birth? If not, do you have enough funds now? But ultimately, CBSA would need to kind of assess, do you have enough funds? Did you make an appointment? Those may be all the kinds of things you have to um, go through. But again, maybe a paid consultation might be best because then it has to be specific. Somebody says, are there age limits or barriers to migrating to Canada or job opportunities in Canada? Well, I would say yes and no. Under the express entry, age is a big barrier, as you may know, because if you're coming to Canada with a spouse, 100 points is what you get. By the time you're 45, you get 0 points for age, and you're just not able to compete. Hence why we would do study or work permits or business immigration, because the business immigration is also work permit. You're able to claim extra 50 or 200 points and replace all of those age points. So age it can be a barrier, but it can also be negated, because if you also then get a provincial nomination, you get 600 points, you more than compensate for the 100 points you lost due to age. So there's always a way around it. I'll say contact us for a free evaluation. Somebody or like the people says, if I want to use job creation to come into Canada, like how much can I have in my account? Well, I addressed it earlier about 150K to 250K Canadian minimum, not necessarily to have in your account. You have to actually put it into a business. And again, you can start small. If you come in, maybe have a partner, there might be ways to do that as well. Um, Somebody says, thank you very much. Are you coming? Please, do you say visitor visa can get work permit again? Is IELTS required for any of this route? For a work permit, IELTS is not required. I will tell you guys, please do not be scared of IELTS. If you need to do training, get it done. In fact, for everybody here who may be really keen on immigration, put your express entry profile up, especially with a category-based selection now under the express entry. You want to have an active profile at any point in time. Do not lock yourself out of a potential opportunity. It's like praying to win the lottery and you don't buy a ticket. You cannot be serious about Canada immigration and not put your profile up. Put your profile up. Even provinces go into the poll and select people who their points do not meet the cutoff. I think the most recent one, and it was somebody in their 50s, because they had ability in French. For French, I think the cutoff score was like 300 and something. So nobody knew that was going to happen or that the score was going to drop that low. So even if your point is 350, just put your profile in. You never know. Anything can happen. So that is my free gift to humanity there. He who has ears, let him hear. Um, Anna Lopez says, we came to Canada for my husband's employment. My son as a dependent, my son as a dependent entered Canada with a study permit. He finished high school this year, but decided to take a break before applying to college. I was wondering if he would qualify for a work permit while he waits to enter college. He's turning 18. This is actually a very good question. The government has a temporary policy in place now, and I hope you heard the question or understood it because I read it a bit fast. Children of work permit holders who are, I think, 14, 15 can now get a work permit. He doesn't have to continue in school. So that son that is turning 18 can apply for a work permit under that temporary policy. So Anna, get in touch. Let's talk further about that. Abiola says, please can you work on study permit if the person has gotten admission or acceptance from a school in Canada? Yes, we can. And we do have many, many successes. Visit our Instagram page. We will be more than happy to work with you. So contact us on WhatsApp and we will be able to help you with your study permit application and perfect it. And while we offer full consultations for whatever pathway you want to go through or consider, we also have DIY consultations for people who do not, who cannot afford full consultation. So giving your application to that agent that is trying to charge you a small amount should not be an excuse for you to get in trouble. We can save you that trouble by you doing a paid, 1 hour consultation. We'll review your application, or even you can break it down into 2 30-minute sessions. We tell you all that you need to put together. We can review it before you submit. So you can still fill up your information yourself and avoid trouble. And then we can point out things that we think are not right. So don't be scared of us as a Canadian licensed immigration consultant in terms of our fees. Okay, so Ruth says, Thank you, Seyefa. Says you are too much. Thank you very much. I hope that's a good compliment. Kende says, I'm an early childhood educator and live in the UK, but I want to move to Canada. I am in my early 40s, so express entry seems like a long shot. I got an EC level 1 from MIN of Education in Saskatchewan, Ministry of Education, I guess, and a younger brother in Ontario. He has a younger brother. What are my options? Well, I would say contact us on WhatsApp. Let's evaluate your options. But yes, as an early childhood educator, can you get a job offer if you have a qualification? Possibly. Um, get in touch. Let's evaluate your case. Somebody asked if our consultations are free. Well, yeah. The one you contact us on WhatsApp, we'll send you some questions, you respond back, we'll give you our responses. They are free. If you do qualify, we'd offer you a 15 minutes free evaluation consultation session over the phone. But yes, when we do decide to kind of give you advice, we call it a case specific advice, then it has to be a paid consultation session, either for 30 minutes or 1 hour, where, say, for instance, you've got a refusal on an application, that would have to be a paid consultation session. We sit down, look at your application, what went wrong, and advise you on how to get it better. Okay. Ruth says, if a study visa is refused based on family ties in Canada, pull factors, how soon is the judicial review? How short is the judicial review for reconsideration? I would say that in order to really advise candidly, you might have a case, but what happens with Canada immigration, sometimes they just tick those boxes in the refusal letters. I would say if I assess your GCMS notes, or if you do the first step of a JR, and you see the reasons, then you can decide whether to go forward or not. We kind of break it down for clients because you have to initiate your judicial review within 60 days. So again, it depends. I can review the application only and tell you if it is judicial review worthy. Not all applications are judicial review worthy. So you would have had to be perfect on all the factors that went in the application in the first place to start before I can tell you your application is judicial review worthy. So again, I would say get in touch. We would evaluate and tell you but it may just not be the family ties in Canada, because again, the visa officer just ticks that box. It doesn't necessarily mean that was the only thing wrong with the application. So I cannot advise if your application is JR worthy if I don't even see it, right? There are many factors. Like a lady who called us once, just to give you as an example. She says, "Oh, I had over $100,000, in my account, paid my tuition in full, yet I was refused on the basis that I did not have enough funds. And can I go for JR?" And I'm like, well, that on the surface, yes, it sounds like it, but let's do a paid consultation session for 1 hour. I want to look at everything that was filled in this form. And, unfortunately, I'll say it was another authorized paid representative that did her file. But when I saw the form, I realized they had made a mistake. There were a few, bits and pieces here and there that could have been better refined, but that wasn't it. On the form, where it says how much money do you have for your living expenses for room and board, I think it was something like $2,000 for the entire year that they had put there. Maybe it was a mistake, whatever it was, an oversight, but clearly a visa officer can refuse the application and that person would not win a judicial review, because it would seem like they assume that $2,000 is all they need for living expenses for a year of study. They clearly do not have an idea what it costs to live in Canada. So yeah, some mistakes like that could actually mean that this officer was right to refuse that application. Now, talking about this and regarding study permit applications, obviously it's made news. Everybody may be talking about it. The government is considering a cap, because whether or not you're watching right now, the study permit approval rate is very high. Let me cautiously say very high, but it's improved significantly. Um, And, there is a housing crisis where there are more people than houses that are available, and is driving the cost of real estate up in Canada. And the former Minister of Immigration, Fraser, who is now the current Minister of Housing, was saying they are considering a cap on students that will come in annually. And obviously that has made so much news. Now, if they are considering a cap, please, would you expect IRCC to approve every application? Obviously not, right? So they can only approve, let's say, the perfect applications. So would they approve one that has $2,000 somewhere or some small mistake in their study plan or whatever it is? So again, IRCC would pick out those ones that have those small flaws and refuse them. Nuruddin question says, please, how can I get a work permit as an IT, I guess, professional from Nigeria? I'm married with 3 kids. Again, there are many IT professionals out there. I cannot speak to it, but definitely anything in tech, put your profile in the Express Entry Express Entry poll and apply to those jobs. Those are the kinds of jobs that, are in demand in Canada. But there's got to be more to it than, being an IT professional, with 3 kids. There are different branches in IT, but again, apply, and put your profile in. Looks like you have a good chance from the surface, anyways. Taiwo says, what does it take to switch from work permit to PR? That question is loaded, but just in case you're curious, you can go online, CRS calculator, put your age, your education. If you haven't taken a language test, you can estimate what your language test results may be. But then again, there are additional points that you may qualify for once you've had work experience in Canada. There are skills transferability factors. There are points for Canadian work experience, and so on for you and your spouse. So if you add up all of that, after spending 2 years, 3 years in Canada, your chances to transition to PR are better. And the likelihood that you'll be able to get a work permit, you'll be able to get a job offer from a Canadian employer with a extra LMIA, extra points in arranged employment points with an LMI is also higher because you're already in Canada. If you also come to certain provinces with the job offer from an employer, you also are qualified for some provincial nomination. You may be qualified for provincial nomination in some provinces under their PNP program. So getting a work permit at first, being able to transfer to PR, your chances are better than just kind of like being, somewhere else and just kind of just looking at the extra entry points, especially if your age, if you're above, I'll say anything from above 35 now also. Okay. So for people of age above 50, any hopes for PR? Yes, 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 yes. 45, 50, 60. You're all in the same category because you've lost all your age points from the age of 50. So again, those extra points due to arranged employment, due to Canadian work experience, all count towards PR. So there's hope. Are you on Telegram? No, unfortunately. We were there, but I'll say keeping up with too many channels is a bit difficult. So WhatsApp, Instagram, those are the platforms we're very active on. Thank you for that question, Olawumi. Juliana says, can I get a work permit with a visitor visa for a conference? Yes, you can. But the work permit, again, has to meet all the requirements, valid job offer, and so on. Emmanuel says, how possible is it to get a work permit with a visitor visa with the knowledge I have a visitor visa for just 6 months? Oh, okay. So let me clarify. Visitor visas in Canada are valid to the validity of your passport. So if you have a 10-year passport, you get a 10 years visa. But you can only stay for 6 months each time you visit Canada. So you can always use your multiple entry visitor visa to come in each time, go back, kind of explore your employment opportunities, each time you visit. What job opportunity for PhD candidates in Canadian university? For a PhD candidate in a Canadian university, you might be qualified for some pathways. I'm not sure what province you're in. Okay, Bugu. If you're in Ontario, for instance, there's a PhD pathway, but suddenly once you graduate, you might be able to take up employment, you get a PGWP and all of that, and you might be eligible, for jobs that are available like any other Canadian, because then you would have the authorization to work in Canada. Somebody said a friend told me one would suffer if he enters Canada through the visitor visa. Please, is this saying the truth? Well, I mean, yeah, because if you do come into Canada without any authorization to work and you just want to, like, you'll probably go out of status after 6 months, right? When we say come in as a visitor, we're saying use it to explore opportunities to get a job offer that will get you a work permit. I'm not telling anybody to come in and just kind of hope that things would fall into place with their visitor visas. No. Some people come in and they're able to, well, it's a loophole in Canadian immigration, but people apply for refugee. I'm not saying they will get approved though, but at least there's also a pathway if done right. So we have some partners. We don't do refugee cases directly, but we have some partners who know what they're doing and might be able to help anybody who wants to consider that route. So evaluation, contact us for a consultation. Is age a barrier to Canada job application? I would say, the Canadian job market is like any other. If you can show at 50 that you have a lot to offer, an employer may consider you. So Indeed.ca is a legitimate website. And I know Indeed, for instance, they will take great care to verify the employers that are listed on there. But again, even if you saw a job there, because I've personally posted some jobs on there myself, and they would ask the employer for different evidences that they're legitimate and all that. So, but again, always do your due diligence. Oh wow, so many questions. Don't even know if we can get through everything. 4:22. Unfortunately, I'm gonna have to end at 4:30 my time, 1 hour 30 minutes. Otherwise, I think it would just be too long. Um, let me see. Okay. Olufemi says, when on a student permit and currently studying in Canada, can I apply for a PR via the Express Entry or Tech Talent pools during the validity of my study permit? Yes, you can. While you're here on a student visa, you might be able to qualify under the federal skilled worker, provided you had your 3 years work experience, blah, blah, blah. So again, you can qualify, just not under the Canadian experience, because you're not done with your study yet. You cannot claim that you already have gotten the study. So that's something to bear in mind. Can you talk about the new spousal open work permit? I'm not sure what that person is referring to, but yes, spousal open work permits. People have been, so you have to be eligible for it, meaning your spouse has to be a worker or student in Canada for you to qualify for spousal open work permits. How can I convert my TRV to study visa? You can come for a free evaluation, but yes, it is possible, and we've done it quite a few times. Just do not declare Canada as your country of residence. I can advise you that for free, no charge. Somebody else asked, I applied for a visitor visa and got a request to submit my passport, but I didn't see the email until after 60 days. Woof! And the application was closed. I still signed the passport anyway, but it was returned without a visa, citing the time difference. Is there anything I can do? Well, yes, you might, well, it depends on how long ago this happened, but we typically do what we call a reconsideration request. And I'll give you an example of, and the reconsideration request sometimes is because RCC has made an error, but in this case, it was clearly your error. But even then, you can still plea. But again, for me to be able to advise whether or not you qualify or you could be successful at a reconsideration request, I'll say come for a free evaluation. When it happens like that, I'll say immediately um, that would need to be done. The passport may have been sent back not by RCC but by VFS on noticing that the date on the letter, had gone beyond the 30 days. So you would have needed to request from RCC again for a reconsideration. And yes, we were successful at one recently where they had asked for a birth certificate of one child, family of four, and the father didn't see the notification until after the 30 days they gave them. But he uploaded the birth certificate on the same day. One child was refused, saying they didn't get the birth certificate. One child was approved, and we did send a reconciliation request, and the case was reopened, and the child's passport request was sent. So again, reasonableness. Are there and we just said the father was working in remote areas. He didn't see, please, singling out this child out of arrest. So whatever it is that surrounds your case, you might be able to send a request for reconsideration, and yes, we can do that. Are there any additional resources or tools that you recommend for visitor visa holders looking to secure LMI supported job offer? Well, like I shared the link that has companies who have received a positive LMIA. You might be able to go on there, look at the positions that you might meet, and cold call those companies, right? But ultimately, I'll say your network is the best way if you already have a visitor visa and you're in Canada to explore getting an employer supported LMI. Again, look to the north and some rural areas as well, not just the cities that you may be visiting. Can you help someone on a visitor visa to get a job? Another, no, we do not, Biola. We do not help people get job offers. Like I tell people, employer-employee relationship is very unique. As a Canadian employer, like somebody can't just tell me, take this person, it just doesn't work like that. So does your skills fit? Contact some recruiters as well, right? They have a list of employers who are looking for people and vice versa. And you may need to do some education to the employers to say, I'm working with somebody who might be able to help you get a job offer. Um, Somebody asked remote colleges to get a postgraduate program with them. I'll say contact us. We can help you with getting job offers. Um, so Jerry says, please recommend apps or sites for job search. I would always say start with Google, right? Because with Google, you're not just working with one website, you're working with multiple websites that you can find. Don't stay on page one, page two, page five, page 10. Keep searching. You could say, and set different search keywords, right? Jobs in Nunavut, jobs in, yeah, some remote Northwest territories, things like that, and go to further places as well. But ultimately, I'll say network. Network, I will rank even higher than Google. Please recommend apps. Okay, yeah, that was that one. I answered it already. I wish to apply and get a job invitation. How soon can it be possible with legit job in manufacturing companies? So yeah, so some industries also are quite, they employ a lot of people like manufacturing. So that's targeting some key employers, and maybe also if your key goal is to just get a job offer, you may not get a job offer in your preferred skill area. It may be um, in manufacturing, right? Just working in the processing line, whatever it is. So again, just see what opportunities are out there. Somebody says, can someone apply for a visiting visa while still pursuing extra entry? I answered that question earlier. The answer is yes. Just demonstrate that you have dual intent. What are the pros and cons of closed work permit and open work permit? That is a very robust question, but very quickly, the pros and the cons, like while on a closed work permit, you could even have the benefit where if you have children in university in provinces like Ontario, Quebec, and BC, they may, your children will be able to pay home student fees. That's one benefit, big benefit of a closed work permit. But again, you're limited to that one employer, while on an open work permit, you have access to all the employers and can bargain for your salary and things like that. So again, that question is just very open-ended. It's just to kind of say reason it or do some research. I don't know what you'll find online. So Victoria says, please can you help someone who already has visiting visa, job logistics, to find a job in a logistics company? No, we don't help with finding jobs. You have to do the work. Um, Somebody says for the express entry route, what is the minimum score one is expected to get? A very, I don't know, not possible to answer, right? Because again, with the category-based selections now, somebody who has 300, let me say 385 or 386, I can't remember what score it was for the French-speaking category selection. It got selected while people who are at 450 are still waiting in the pool, not getting selected. So it's not really about this points alone now. Just get your profile in and do everything you can while your profile is in, whether it's considering study if you can afford it, or applying to jobs if you can't afford study, doing whatever it is, at least to get you in, would be what to consider while your express entry profile is up. Um, for the caregiver pilot program, if you're a visitor, you cannot apply from inside Canada, you would have to apply from outside. Somebody else asks is data analytics within, I cannot tell, you'll have to do some research regarding your tier, what it falls under, and if you want to have a paid consultation, we can kind of narrow it down with you. Um, I think it's 4:30 now, 9:30 in Nigeria, and whatever time it is, wherever you are. And I just wanted to say thank you, thank you, thank you for joining us. It's been a really, really, I don't even know what. I think very, packed session in this 1.5 hours, but thank you for spending the time with us today. And we hope we've been able to add value by giving you a lot of free information. Like we said, please follow us on all our channels, contact us on WhatsApp, refer people who may be looking for an authorized representative to work with. We do give a little bit of a, thank you, however ways, maybe discount on your own fees, whatever it is, we can talk about that. So um get in touch, follow us, let us know what you think about the webinar. When we do post it on YouTube or wherever else, I've seen lots of thank yous and God bless yous. Thank you too for spending the time. I really appreciate it. Amen to the God bless yous, and have a wonderful um evening. Right? Take care. Bye.